You don't notice it at first, the way people adjust themselves around you. A shift in tone, a softer blink, a barely delayed breath. You think these moments are random, or harmless, or simply human. But they're not. They are reactions, and reactions are never neutral. Every reaction is a response to power, or the absence of it. Every reaction reveals how people perceive you long before you perceive yourself. You walk into a room thinking you're just there. But everyone else is already measuring you. They're reading the micro-tensions in your shoulders, the quiet in your eyes, the weight of your steps. They're registering your presence like a silent equation. If you appear confident, they adopt a tone of cautious politeness. If you appear unsure, their voice unconsciously rises, as if speaking to a child. If you appear tired, they move a little closer, because tired minds are easier to influence. And you never notice it, because nobody ever told you to. In the corner of the room stands a thin shadow, tall, silent, analytical. Machiavelli, not as a saint, not as a demon, but as an observer of human nature. He watches the way people react to you with cold clarity, making notes in a mind that has long understood what modern society ignores. People behave according to incentives, emotions, and perception, not ideals. You think people like you because you're kind. You think they dislike you because you made a mistake. You think they trust you because you're honest. But Machiavelli knows the truth. People react to who they think you are, not who you actually are. You can be kind, but if your kindness looks weak, they'll resent you. You can be honest, but if your honesty threatens their ego, they'll avoid you. You can be intelligent, but if your intelligence exposes their insecurity, they'll subtly sabotage you. Human reactions are not moral. They're psychological. You don't see this because the world has trained you to focus on what people say, not how people respond. You learn to listen to their words, but no one taught you to study their incentives. You learned to assume fairness, but no one taught you that fairness depends on leverage. You learned to be good, but no one taught you that goodness without boundaries is prey. Machiavelli steps closer, silent, hands behind his back. He doesn't comfort you. He doesn't soften anything. He simply observes you the way a strategist observes the battlefield. And then he shows you, not through speech, but through the reactions around you. A coworker suddenly grows colder when you improve at something. A friend grows distant when you start asserting yourself. A partner grows irritated when they can no longer predict your behavior. A stranger becomes polite when you hold strong eye contact. A manipulator becomes nervous when you stop over-explaining yourself. You start noticing the pattern. People don't respond to what you do. They respond to what your actions mean to them. You thought you were living in a social world, but you're actually living inside a psychological feedback loop. A loop shaped by perception, fear, hierarchy, attraction, insecurity, and the invisible rules of influence. The truth hits you slowly. You've been reacting your entire life, not influencing. Every time you apologize too quickly. Every time you laughed too loudly to fill a silence. Every time you lowered your voice just to avoid tension. Every time you explained yourself to someone who didn't deserve the explanation. Every time you tried to be agreeable so others wouldn't feel threatened. Those were not gestures of communication. They were signals people interpreted, calculated, and used. And Machiavelli, standing behind you, offers no pity. He simply watches because he knows what you are only now beginning to see. You cannot escape social influence by being nice or being good. You escape influence only by understanding it. The world is not controlled by strength, nor intelligence, nor morality. It is controlled by perception. And perception can be engineered. The moment you adjust your posture, the room recalibrates. When your tone is steady, people mirror it. When you pause before speaking, they pay attention. When you remove the tendency to justify yourself, they unconsciously elevate you. When you observe before reacting, they sense unpredictability, the birthplace of power. At first, it unsettles you. You realize that every social moment in your life has been shaped not by intention, but by interpretation. People have been reading you like a story you never wrote. They've been taking cues from your body language, your micro-reactions, your silence, your speed, your rhythm. You start to understand something chilling. Every conversation you've ever had was actually a negotiation. You just didn't know you were negotiating. A negotiation of comfort. A negotiation of ego. A negotiation of dominance. A negotiation of trust. A negotiation of emotional territory. You were playing the game blind. They weren't. That's why the reactions around you sometimes felt confusing, unfair, unpredictable. They were never random. They were responses to signals you didn't even know you were sending. Machiavelli finally speaks, his voice quiet, almost indifferent. Power doesn't come from force. It comes from the ability to shape perception before others can resist it. You feel the words more than you hear them, because suddenly everything makes sense. Influence isn't what you do. Influence is what people feel when you exist in their space. And until now, you never controlled that. But the moment you see the code behind human reactions, the world stops being chaotic. It becomes readable, interpretable, predictable. And this is only the beginning. You always believed that reading people was some mystical talent, something only empaths, manipulators, or naturally intuitive minds possessed. But now, standing in the quiet shadow of Machiavelli, you begin to understand that it's not intuition. It's pattern recognition. It's noticing the microsignals that everyone broadcasts but almost no one pays attention to. People reveal themselves long before they speak. Their eyes, their pace, their breathing, the angle of their chin. Every movement is a confession. You watch a man enter a cafe. His eyes flinch for half a second when the barista asks a question. Submission. His shoulders tighten when someone walks behind him. Alertness. His fingers tap against his cup. Anxiety. You don't need his biography. His body already wrote it. Machiavelli stands beside you, hands folded behind his back, observing the same man without emotion. People expose their state of mind unconsciously, he says. If you learn to watch, you learn to influence. And he's right, because every reaction you see is also a reaction you can shape. The secret is simple. People are predictable. Once you understand their emotional patterns, you begin to study the architecture of those patterns. A person who avoids eye contact is not shy. They're protecting something. A person who laughs too easily is not friendly. They're seeking approval. A person who speaks too quickly is not confident. They're anxious about being judged. A person who needs to explain everything is not honest. They fear misinterpretation. A person who insists they're not bothered is almost always very bothered. You realize how often people tell you the truth accidentally. Every hesitation reveals uncertainty. Every sudden smile reveals discomfort. Every defensive tone reveals insecurity. Every delayed response reveals calculation. Every silence reveals a conflict between emotion and intention. And once you learn the pattern, you can predict the next move. Machiavelli watches your realization unfold with a detached satisfaction. He leads you into a crowd, a street busy, pulsing with hidden psychology. He does not speak, but everything becomes clearer. A woman clutches her purse closer when someone walks too near. Fear of vulnerability. Two men talk loudly, but never make eye contact, competing for dominance in a conversation that pretends to be friendly. A teenager scrolls on his phone with aggressive speed, seeking escape from an emotional environment he can't control. A couple walks together, but their steps are out of sync. One is retreating emotionally, the other is chasing. Without a single word, the entire street becomes readable. That's when Machiavelli turns to you. Reading people is not about seeing who they are, he says. It's about seeing what they're responding to. Influence lives in the space between stimulus and reaction. When you control the stimulus, you shape the reaction. It sounds manipulative, but influence is not inherently dark. It is inevitable. The only question is, are you the one influencing or the one being influenced? You start experimenting quietly, subtly. You hold eye contact 2 seconds longer than usual. People become cautious. They take you more seriously. You speak slower. People start adjusting their pace to match yours. You stop rushing to fill silences. People reveal more than they intended. You don't nod too quickly. People start justifying themselves without being asked. These are not tricks. They are shifts in perception. The moment you change your rhythm, the world recalibrates around you. But there's a deeper layer to influence. The layer Machiavelli has been leading you toward. Incentives. Every human action is shaped by an internal incentive, even if the person is unaware of it. Approval, control, security, validation, superiority, fear, predictability, comfort, attention. Influence is never about force. It is about aligning with someone's incentive long enough to guide their behavior. You see it everywhere now. The coworker who suddenly respects you, not because you stood up to them, but because you stopped reacting. The friend who becomes more considerate, not because you argued, but because you became unpredictable. The manipulator who backs off, not because you exposed them, but because they sensed you stopped needing their approval. The partner who becomes calmer, Not because you explained yourself, but because you stopped over-explaining. Everyone's reactions shift the moment your internal incentives change. You realize something profound. You cannot influence others if you cannot regulate yourself. If your emotions are predictable, your reactions are predictable. If your reactions are predictable, your behavior is controllable. If your behavior is controllable, you are not the one holding influence. Machiavelli steps in front of you now, the faint aura behind him flickering like a quiet signal of awareness. Control yourself, and you control the world's response to you, he says. Lose yourself, and the world shapes you instead. This is the core mechanism behind all social influence. Emotional control is the gateway to perceptual power. Not suppression, not denial, but awareness, the ability to notice your reaction before it becomes visible. You begin training yourself. A slow exhale instead of a quick reply. A calm expression instead of a defensive explanation. A curious question instead of an emotional assumption. A pause before reacting, even when you feel threatened. These micro-controls make people recalibrate instantly. Because nothing is more intimidating or more magnetic than someone who cannot be easily read. You become harder to manipulate, harder to predict, harder to undermine, harder to ignore. And as you gain control over your reactions, you unlock the ability to shape the emotional landscape of every interaction. People lean in when you relax. People soften when you don't compete. People reveal when you remain silent. People respect when you remain steady. Power becomes less about dominance and more about direction, the subtle guidance of human behavior through emotional clarity. Machiavelli watches this transformation with a quiet nod. This is what he wanted you to see. Influence is not a tactic. It is a state of awareness. A psychological lens that turns the world from unpredictable noise into a readable map. But there is one final layer, the shift that transforms awareness into mastery. A shift that changes not only how you read the world, but how the world reacts to you. A shift that Machiavelli has been preparing you for since the beginning. The awakening. You don't feel the awakening at first. There's no dramatic moment, no burst of clarity, no heavy realization. Awakening is quieter. It arrives like a shift in temperature. A subtle coldness. A deeper stillness. One day, you simply notice that you're no longer in the social world, you're watching it. You're outside the reactions, outside the noise, outside the chaos that used to pull you in. People speak, and you hear the insecurity beneath their tone. People smile, and you see the calculation behind their eyes. People get angry, and you sense the fear hiding under their rage. You're not judging them. You're simply awake. Machiavelli stands beside you at the edge of a busy street. He is not your teacher anymore. He is your reflection. A symbolic reminder of what it means to look at humanity without denial. He observes the world with you, and together you see the same pattern. Most people are not thinking, they are reacting. Reacting to fear, to ego, to insecurity, to old emotional wounds they never confronted. Reacting to stories they inherited, beliefs they never questioned, judgments they never examined. Influence works so easily on them because influence slips through the gaps in self-awareness. The awakening is realizing that those gaps once controlled you too. You remember the old version of yourself. The version that apologized too fast. The version that feared silence. The version that reacted to every tone shift. The version that needed validation more than clarity. The version that let emotions reveal what should have remained hidden. That version of you was readable, predictable, influenceable. But now something has changed. You no longer react to emotional pressure. You notice it. And the moment you notice it, it loses its power. That's the essence of awakening. You stop being controlled by what you can see clearly. Machiavelli gestures toward the street, toward the swirl of humanity moving through their own illusions. He says quietly, most people live inside the reactions of others. Few choose to live inside their own perception. That's the shift you feel now, a stabilization inside yourself. You're not trying to impress. You're not trying to belong. You're not trying to win arguments. You're not trying to appear strong or kind or agreeable. You're operating from awareness, not approval. You begin to understand the final layer of the Machiavellian Code. Influence doesn't come from controlling others. It comes from controlling the meaning of your presence. Asterisk, asterisk. Your calmness changes the emotional temperature of the room. Your silence forces others to fill in the blanks. Your steadiness signals psychological power. Your lack of defensiveness unsettles manipulators. Your unpredictability forces respect. You realize you don't need to outsmart anyone. You only need to see what they're responding to, and not feed it. A person trying to intimidate you is expecting fear. You give them stillness. A person trying to guilt-trip you is expecting justification. You give them neutrality. A person trying to provoke you is expecting reaction. You give them quiet observation. A person trying to charm you is expecting warmth. You give them measured presence. You stop playing their game, and suddenly they have nothing to grip onto. Human nature reveals another truth. People lose their power over you the moment you stop supplying the emotional fuel they feed on. You feel Machiavelli watching you, almost approvingly, as you move through conversations with a new kind of awareness. Someone insults you, and instead of defending yourself, you calmly examine their motive. Someone tries to manipulate you, and you observe the angle they're using. Someone lies, and you notice the tension in their voice before the sentence ends. Someone tries to charm you, and you see the desperation behind their eyes. You're no longer inside the moment. You're above it. That's when Machiavelli speaks for the last time. Influence is vision. Once you see the code, you cannot unsee it. Your power is not what you say or do. It's what others sense when they're in your presence. You feel the weight of those words. Not heavy, but absolute. Because you know he's right. The awakening is not about becoming cold. It is not about becoming manipulative. It is not about becoming dominant. It is about becoming conscious. Conscious of how people operate. Conscious of how emotions move through a room. Conscious of your own internal state before you reveal it. Conscious of the patterns that govern every human interaction. You're no longer the person who gets lost in reactions. You're the person who sees the structure behind them. And as you walk away, leaving Machiavelli in the symbolic background, a figure of awareness rather than authority, you realize something profound. The world hasn't changed. People haven't changed. Human nature hasn't changed. You have changed. And that change alters everything. You now carry a presence that others feel immediately. A presence shaped by emotional control, perceptual clarity, and unshakable awareness. A presence that cannot be manipulated easily. A presence that cannot be ignored. A presence that cannot be misunderstood. A presence that quietly says, I see more than I show, and I react less than you expect. This is the Machiavellian awakening, not a descent into darkness, but a rise into perception. You step forward into the world with new eyes, and for the first time in your life, you are not influenced by reactions. You are shaping them.